Hello, Hare Krishna. My name is Jwalamukhi Dasi, and this is the second part of the video series called Evil Agenda. It is speaking about two recent classes in the new Raman Reiti temple, and I am addressing these comments to the devotees at large for them to understand the symptoms of the Great Sinister Movement and its members and how it has affected the organization called ISKCON and what that means for you and for me and for all of us today going forward, and how we are supposed to execute our devotional service in light of what has happened, in light of what is coming out all over the place, especially in regards to the child abuse and the response or lack of response to it and what that actually purports. So in the first part, the first video, I am speaking about the Great Sinister Movement and its agenda and addressing the cheaters. Kamar Prabhu wrote an essay, and I spoke that essay in the first video. The second one is I'm making responses to Mr. Cohen or Brahmatirtha's class that was given some short time ago at the new Raman Reiti temple. You can go on their live stream and go back and listen to those classes. I heard about it from a friend of mine whose children attend the Bhaktivedanta Academy, and the children go to lectures once a week. I think they call it Worship Wednesday, and they sit in the class and are part of the temple service on Wednesday mornings. And so Brahmatirtha was giving a class there, and it was so objectionable that several of the parents took their children out of the class, and he was requested never to give class again when the children are present. So I am speaking about this class, and if you have the stomach for it, you can go and listen to the whole class yourself and see what I'm talking about. So here we are. Mr. Cohen made his purpose in giving class obvious by his statements and the line of questions. Instead of following in the footsteps of his initiating spiritual master, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, and illuminating his purports in the line of our parampara and previous acharyas, he chose instead to sit upon the raised seat and challenge the position of our founder acharya Srila Prabhupada. If academics and hermeneutics could bring one to the lotus feet of the Lord, then there would be no counting the number of devotees in the scholarly arena. Srila Prabhupada told us that even though there were hundreds of translations of Bhagavad Gita, not one devotee of Krishna was made. The Brahmanas 5,000 years ago, whose wives went to Krishna with foodstuffs from the yajna, cursed their so-called Vedic knowledge and chanting of mantras because they missed the chance to serve the Supreme Lord directly, which is the ultimate goal of all Vedic knowledge and all Vedic sacrifices. So Brahmatirtha Bob Cohen says, so somebody identifies something in here that you find materially wrong, something in the purport that appears to be materially wrong. He's asking the children. He read some purport there, and you can go and look at that. And then he asks them, so somebody identifies something in here that you find materially wrong, something in the purport that appears to be materially wrong. And my comment is, what should be the mood of a disciple? Is it, my only wish is to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth, what we sing daily, or, as Bob Cohen says here, let's look for what's wrong in Srila Prabhupada's writing and address this to children. Observe his mood and purpose behind asking the children to find faults with Srila Prabhupada's purports. If there is any doubt or confusion that arises from what Srila Prabhupada says, is the right approach to ask, how is Srila Prabhupada right? Or, how is Srila Prabhupada wrong, and here's why? What does the Supreme Lord Krishna himself tell us on how to approach the spiritual master? To serve the spiritual master with faith and confidence. 11th canto, 17th chapter, 22nd verse. It is stated by Lord Krishna, my dear Uddhava, The spiritual master must be accepted not only as my representative, but as my very self. He must never be considered on the same level with an ordinary human being. One should never be envious of the spiritual master, as one may be envious of an ordinary man. The spiritual master should always be seen as the representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And by serving the spiritual master, one is able to serve all the demigods. With Mr. Cohen's reasoning, he is asking the children to find faults with Krishna himself and put themselves above the Lord and his representative by giving their own opinions based on their own fallible, conditioned experiences. Mr. Cohen continues, so I am going to read a sentence here, and you tell me what's wrong with this sentence. All in all, what's wrong with that sentence, he says. My comment, who the hell does he think he is? How are the devotees in the temple room not standing up in a fury and physically throwing this man out? How are they passively agreeing with him by sitting there and exposing their children to this line of blasphemy? What has happened to our ISKCON? Remember what Srila Prabhupada said about the Great Sinister Movement, that it was a fact and that it was within us, it was within ISKCON. This is the tip of the iceberg. Mr. Cohen continues, but you're disagreeing with Prabhupada? Oh my, what are we going to do with this guy? So if you go back and read the verse, it's about how people only live to about 50 or 60 years old in Kali Yuga. And Srila Prabhupada, he's saying that, but Mr. Cohen is saying, well, you know, your grandparents, how old are your grandparents? Aren't they older than 50 or 60 years? Who's got a grandparent that's older than 50 or 60 years? Oh, 80. Oh, okay. So you see, you know, what Prabhupada said isn't right. They're living past 15, 60 years old. So he's trying to encourage the children to find that what Prabhupada is saying doesn't apply to them, and therefore what he says is wrong. So that's the line that he's going on. And you can go to the website at the temple and listen to his words. So he's sarcastically making a joke here. Oh, you're disagreeing with Srila Prabhupada? Oh my, what are we going to do with this guy? He says to one child. And he says this with feigned surprise, all the while beaming approval. He continues, somebody else have that same opinion? What's your opinion? Okay, so we have an issue here. My comment. In a lecture on Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Leela 1:4, in Mayapur, March 28th, 1975, His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada says this about the word opinion. Now, this is a topic that's very, very important to me because recently I had something very important come up in my family life related to quoting Srila Prabhupada about a certain matter and relaying his instructions, following Krishna's instructions, transmitting Krishna's instructions. And when I represented what Srila Prabhupada said on a certain matter, it was thrown back into my face and said, oh, why did you give me your opinion? Krishna consciousness has nothing to do with your opinion. It has to do with God's opinion. And how much your opinion matches with God's opinion is how rightly situated you are. So asking a child, what's your opinion, is giving them the completely wrong method. It's not the descending process of receiving Krishna consciousness. It's the empiric, scientific, puffed up, foolish understanding of Dr. Frog. And this is what's being propagated right now. So Srila Prabhupada says, don't adulterate. I think, in my opinion. These nonsense things should be given up. We should always be aware that we are insignificant creatures. Our opinion and thinking has no value. This should be the first principle. Why should you give opinions on the word of Krishna? You are more authoritative person than Krishna? This is foolishness, to try to become more than Krishna. There are so many rascals. They present that now we have become advanced. We know more than Krishna. So be saved from these rascals. Then you will understand Krishna. And through Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you will understand what is the position of Krishna. What is your relationship with Krishna? What is the ultimate goal of life? These things will be clearly exhibited. My comment. Is Mr. Cohen training the children to value their own conditioned opinions on the same level or higher than the Acharya's opinions? Is he training them with the approval of all of the adults sitting there to see Srila Prabhupada as an ordinary man and place themselves on an equal level or even a higher level than Srila Prabhupada? He praises them for doing so, as he says, and finds fault in Srila Prabhupada's words. Very good, he encourages the children. Yes, you do have a grandparent older than 50 or 60 years. Just see, you found a fault, a paradox, an anomaly. Very good, he encourages. Mr. Cohen continues. This is called the science of hermeneutics. I can't even say it right. What a scholar I am. Hermeneutics means the science of understanding Shastra. So how do you deal with a sentence like this, where Prabhupada says something that seems factually different than your own experience? My comment. Without sitting at the lotus feet of the bona fide representative of Krishna in utmost submission and respect, there is absolutely no way to understand anything of Shastra, period. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 23, Text 31, Purport, Srila Prabhupada says, there is no duality between Vishnu and Vaishnava, and this is called Advaya Jnana. A Vaishnava is as important as Vishnu, and therefore, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur wrote in his Gurvashtika, Shakshadhari Tvenana Samasta Shastre, Uktastatava yata eva sadbhi, kintu prabhurya priya eva tasya vande guru shri charanara vindam. The spiritual master is honored as much as the Supreme Lord, because he is the most confidential servitor of the Lord. This is acknowledged in all revealed scriptures and is followed by all authorities. In Srila Prabhupada's purports, sometimes the commentaries of the previous acharyas differ in their opinions. Srila Prabhupada simply presents what both of the acharyas have said, with no comment. He does not try to find fault with any previous acharya. He does not minimize either previous acharya. He states it simply, respectfully, and honoring, humbly, faithfully. This is the proper way to understand the science of the absolute truth, with a submissive attitude, not artificially puffed up with material intelligence, which is in fact the pathway to hell, Mr. Cohen. Of course we use our intelligence. We are not blind followers. But where does that intelligence to understand Shastra come from? Shastra means weapon. It means the weapon to destroy the ignorance in our hearts. And do you think you're going to become enlightened by being puffed up, standing on the head of your spiritual master? Do you think Krishna is going to be pleased to remove Maya Shakti from your heart? No, far from it, and quite the opposite. The intelligence to understand Krishna comes from Krishna in the heart, who reveals himself when and if he is satisfied with the devotee's mood of humility and surrender. Srila Prabhupada says in a conversation with Siddhaswarup Prabhupada, you have to strictly carry out faithfully. Siddhaswarup says, yes, Prabhupada, the orders of Krishna and spiritual master without any consideration. Siddhaswarup, yes, Prabhupada. then that is perfection. And if you make your own idea, the spiritual master is not so intelligent, I am more than intelligent, I can do like this, then you are doomed. Yasya prasad had bhagavat prasad ho. As soon as we manufacture, concoct, then doomed. Siddhasvarup. Then, so then the relationship isn't one of trying to gain something from my spiritual master and worrying that in the future I will be able to gain. Prabhupada, he has given you already. Siddhasvarup. Yes, Prabhupada. The gain is that now you carry out. Furthermore, Brahmatirtha Bob Cohen says, this again in reference to the conversation he's having with the children about, Srila Prabhupada's statement that in Kali Yuga people only live a short period of time. He says, oh, clever, Prabhupada was 80, so we have a dilemma here. We are about to have a crisis of faith. Is that what's happening? We have a severe crisis of faith. He's saying this mockingly, jokingly. So you want to say something? I want to hear everyone, people at home and in the peanut gallery, or whatever they are. So here's my comment on the peanut gallery, Mr. Bob Cohen. Mr. Cohen praises the child for pointing out that Prabhupada himself was 80, when in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says that people in Kali Yuga will only live between 40 and 60 years old. This is Mr. Cohen's whole entry point in finding fault with Srila Prabhupada and training the children on the Vyasasan. Remember, he gives lots of lectures at the Krishna house, so beware. He's training the children to do the same. And no one in the room gets up and says anything or throws him out. Mr. Bob Cohen continues to say, we have a dilemma here. Artificially creating a problem where there is none. What is he trying to do? He states it himself. We have a severe crisis of faith. I would ask, Mr. Cohen, do you have faith? Are you chaining the third generation to have no faith either? What are you doing? He continues, people in the peanut gallery, which is another way of trying to cut one off at the pass by preemptively demeaning anyone who may disagree with him, whatever they may be, peanut gallery, haha. He anticipates criticism from devotees who may be listening over the internet and so attacks them beforehand, trying to minimize them and their defense of Srila Prabhupada. He belittles them by calling them the peanut gallery, which means, dictionary meaning, a group of people who criticize someone often by focusing on an insignificant detail. But is Mr. Cohen's mood insignificant? What happens to one who is envious of the pure devotee of the Lord? All his culture of knowledge is utterly destroyed. So, Mr. Cohen's words are very significant indeed. Also, in case you are not aware of this fact, Satanists have to tell you what they are doing to you up front beforehand while they are doing it to you. It is part of the unconscious contract that you sign onto when you engage with them. But the problem is that as an innocent person, you have no idea of the level of evil that you are dealing with, and so see their blatant statements as benign or innocent, or maybe you just didn't understand. Come again? For example, the Dominion voting machine's slogan is, changing the way you vote. Literally. So out in your face that you can't even see it. Bob also states here that my intention is to violate every piece of tradition we have. Mr. Progressive here. Again, he presents this as if it were a joke, even a good thing, to put ladies first, as if he were making progress by so-called honoring them. But what he is saying is literal. Does he consider women to be their bodies, so less intelligent that they're going to fall for this, that they're not identifying as spirit souls, devotees? Does he consider them to be less intelligent and buy into this cheap flattery of the bodily identification of being a woman? Is he playing on their material sentiments? And with their approval, is he doing as he himself states, intending to violate every piece of tradition we have? Literally. To show either favor or disrespect on the basis of the body is violence to the soul within. It demonstrates the material consciousness of the one acting that way. This movement is for training Paramahamsa transcendentalists, not reinforcing bodily identification positively or negatively for the dubious manipulations of the evil agendists. In case you don't know this, Satanists play both sides of any issue. That is why they have black and white checkered floors. To them, everything is relative anyway. Nirvishesha Shunyavadi. And you are ultimately God yourself. In regard to Mr. Cohen's statements of violating every tradition we have, in relation to insinuating that the women are being mistreated by following the Vedic culture that Srila Prabhupada gave us. So in other words, he's saying, oh, you poor women, you've been so mistreated. Here, let me treat you right. But what happened to the women was not Srila Prabhupada's doing. And what he's doing is not the Vedic culture. It is not Krishna consciousness. It is manipulation. Any female disciple of Srila Prabhupada will tell you about their loving exchanges with Srila Prabhupada that were completely uplifting and free from any bodily consideration. They were empowered by Srila Prabhupada and could feel his deep love and complete acceptance of them as a spirit soul. It was not Srila Prabhupada who was behind all the misogynistic abuses of women that ensued in ISKCON. It was planned by the satanic Masons, who, by the way, are primarily homosexual and who have a great time dressing in saffron robes. Remember, they were trained and planted by the world elite for the purpose of destroying within. How better to destroy than to tear down the women and children? And of course, blame it on Srila Prabhupada and his archaic preaching. Cohen totally and utterly misunderstands and misrepresents Vedic culture. The sacredness of the sexes, male and female both, and how they mutually respect and support each other spiritually. And Mr. Cohen says, it's just silliness that ruins our preaching in the West. Again, he presents himself and his affiliates as progressing, while portraying Srila Prabhupada as materially fallible, antiquated, flawed, and full of paradoxes. Keep in mind, Masons, Kabbalists, Satanists place a very high value on linguistics. They are expertly trained in neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP. Contrivingly, they use this art to build rapport with their unwitting audience. When the audience feels comfortable, they submit, lulled into a false sense of connection. Then, the Satanist cabal member leads them wherever they want with no argument. See, it was your own idea, wasn't it? And aren't I charming? I'm your likable hero, aren't I? And see, the Acharya is no better than an ordinary man like you and I. We are all God. Don't you feel good now? You may think I am stretching it here, but you don't know what I know yet. What I lived through was unspeakable. And what these people are capable of in broad daylight is unimaginable. Is Mr. Cohen bringing up examples of Srila Prabhupada sanctioning, breaking the four regulative principles in a very specific, difficult situations because he is trying to tell us something about himself? Does he follow the four regulative principles? Is he alluding to eating meat, taking intoxication and prostitution for any good reason? Nah, how could that possibly be? No one could be that big of a blatant hypocrite or imposter, could they? If anyone cares for my opinion, I would say, how cruel How cruel. They try to take away the only shelter there is, faith in Srila Prabhupada, who opens the door to Krishna, who brings us back home, back to Godhead. And these rascals are so envious. They want to shut the door on your faith, implant their poisonous little doubts, seeds of demons in your heart. And they want to leave you confused and at their mercy to be their prey. But I say, are you going to allow this? Or are you going to stand up and fight like the spiritual warrior that you are and make Srila Prabhupada proud of you? Make Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati proud of you? Are you going to sit at the feet of the Acharyas and bring forth the golden age? Thank you for listening. I'll see you in my next video, part 3 of Evil Agenda. Hare Krishna. Jai Srila Prabhupada.